78 degrees north. This is Svalbard. An archipelago so far from everything that it sits closer to the North Pole than to the Norwegian capital that governs it. Seen from above, it appears as jagged peaks pushing through cloud and mist. Ancient rock thrust upward from the sea, crusted in ice, belonging to no particular season. "61,000 square kilometres of mountains, glaciers and frozen tundra. Home to fewer than 3,000 people and roughly 3,500 polar bears. Here, warning signs for polar bears outnumber traffic signs. Colourful houses cling to hillsides as if uncertain of their right to remain. The rules that govern most of the world do not quite apply. It is illegal to leave the settlement without a firearm. And in one of the strangest laws on Earth, it is illegal to die here. Svalbard does not ask for permission. It does not make accommodations. It simply exists on its own terms, as it always has. Svalbard is an archipelago of 9 major islands and hundreds of smaller ones. Strung across the ocean between the northern edge of Norway and the Arctic ice sheet. Fjords cut deep into the rock. Mountains rise without warning from the sea. More than 60% of the land surface is permanently covered in ice. 65% of Svalbard is protected as national parks and nature reserves, one of the largest proportions of any territory on Earth. The remaining 35% is where everything else happens: the mining, the science stations, the handful of settlements clinging to the coastline. What the landscape does not reveal immediately is its age. Svalbard was not always here, in the cold. "300 million years ago, this rock sat near the equator. Over geological time, moving at the pace of continents, it drifted north. The evidence of that warmer past still lies beneath the surface: vast seams of coal, formed from ancient tropical forests, now locked inside Arctic mountains. That coal drew the first permanent settlers. Miners from Norway, Russia, Sweden, men who arrived not for the scenery, but for what was underneath it. The scenery, it turned out, was extraordinary. Svalbard is still being shaped. The glaciers that cover so much of it are not static, they move, carve into the sea, retreat. The ground beneath the tundra is permafrost, but it is thawing faster here than almost anywhere else on the planet. This place is not finished. It is mid-process, like everything in the natural world. Most territories have a single claim on them. Svalbard has 46. In 1920, following the end of the First World War, 9 nations gathered in Paris to settle the question of an archipelago. Most of them had never visited. The result was the Svalbard Treaty, a document that has shaped everything that followed. Under the treaty, Norway holds sovereignty over Svalbard, but any citizen of the 46 signatory nations, a list that now includes Russia, China, India, and dozens of others, has the right to live and work here without a visa, without paying Norwegian taxes, and without asking for permission. Svalbard is, in legal terms, one of the most open territories on Earth. The practical consequences are visible in the landscape. Russia has maintained a permanent settlement here since the 1930s. At one point, more Soviet citizens lived on Svalbard than Norwegians. Today, the Russian settlement of Barentsburg still flies its own flag, maintains its own infrastructure, and exists under a legal arrangement found nowhere else in the Arctic. A sovereign Norwegian territory where another nation operates, essentially, on its own terms. Svalbard also has no border controls. No one checks your passport arriving here. Citizens of non-signatory countries can still enter freely. What keeps the population manageable is not law but physics, the cost of living, the cold, the darkness, and the requirement that every resident must be able to support themselves financially. On the map, Svalbard belongs to Norway. In practice, it belongs to whoever is willing to survive here. Longyearbyen is, by most definitions, the northernmost town on Earth. It has a supermarket, a university, a sushi restaurant, a craft brewery, and a law against dying. The population sits at around 2,400. In winter, the nearest city of any size is several hours away by plane, assuming the weather allows it. The law against dying is not a metaphor. Since 1950, it has been officially prohibited to be buried in Longyearbyen. The permafrost beneath the town ground, frozen year-round to depths of several hundred metres, prevents bodies from decomposing. Pathogens preserved for centuries can survive intact in these conditions. In 1998, researchers exhumed remains from the town's old cemetery and found intact influenza virus from the 1918 pandemic. The cold, it turns out, is an almost perfect preservative. The practical consequence: residents who are terminally ill must be flown off the island to die elsewhere. Those who die unexpectedly are handled by the mainland. The graveyard that does exist holds only older graves. stopped at a date when the rule came into effect. Longyearbyen does not grow its dead. It exports them. There is also no homelessness permitted in Longyearbyen. Not from cruelty, but from physics at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Without shelter and employment, a person cannot survive. Every resident must demonstrate that they can financially support themselves. The town has no social housing program, no safety net of the kind that exists on the Norwegian mainland. What protects people here is not policy. It is the requirement to be useful. Leaving the settlement requires a firearm. Polar bears roam freely across the archipelago and have killed people here within living memory. The gun is not optional. It is a condition of passage into the landscape. In Longyearbyen, the rules of survival have become the rules of society. Norway is one of the wealthiest nations on Earth. A country whose sovereign wealth fund, built on oil revenues, is the largest of its kind in the world. Norway is also still mining coal, here in Svalbard, at 78 degrees north. This is not a contradiction they overlook. It is one they have chosen carefully. The reason is not economic. Norwegian coal from Svalbard is not particularly profitable, and it has not been for some time. The reason is geopolitical. The Svalbard Treaty requires that Norway maintain a genuine presence on the islands, not just administrative offices, but active settlements, industry, activity. To stop mining is to risk ceding the argument, quietly, to other treaty nations that are still extracting. Russia understands this logic well. Its settlement at Barentsburg continues to operate for precisely the same reason. Meanwhile, tourism has become the archipelago's fastest growing industry. Cruise ships now navigate waters that were, until recently, accessible only to research vessels and icebreakers. Hikers, photographers, and wildlife enthusiasts arrive in growing numbers each summer, drawn by the polar bears, the glaciers, and the unsettling beauty of a place. That feels like the edge of the known world. The tension is not difficult to identify. The qualities that draw visitors to Svalbard are precisely the qualities that mass visitation threatens. The silence, the emptiness, the sense that here, at last, is somewhere that has not yet been fully claimed by the modern world. The economy of Svalbard is, in many ways, a negotiation between the world as it was and the world as it needs to become. Pyramiden. Population 0, but it is not empty. A giant metal crane stands in the tundra, patient as a monument. Walkways connect buildings that no one walks through. And somewhere near the central square, a bust of Lenin still faces north. Because the men who placed it there never came back to move it. The Soviet Union purchased this site from Sweden in 1927. At its peak, Pyramiden was home to more than 1,000 people. It had an indoor swimming pool, the northernmost in the world. A concert hall, a school with a greenhouse that grew cucumbers and tomatoes in the Arctic dark. It had a sports complex, a cultural centre, a library stocked with thousands of volumes. None of this was built because coal required it. It was built to demonstrate that Soviet civilization could flourish anywhere, even here, at the edge of the polar world. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the funding dried up slowly, then all at once. By 1998, the decision had been made. Pyramiden would be abandoned. In October of that year, approximately 900 residents departed over the course of just a few days. They left furniture in the apartments, food in the canteen, books open on desks. The town did not end, it paused. And in the permafrost, nothing rots. The pause has held for more than 25 years. A handful of caretakers remain today, maintaining the site as a kind of Arctic heritage attraction. Tour boats arrive in summer. Visitors walk the empty corridors and photograph the silent gymnasium where weight training equipment still sits in perfect rows. Pyramiden is not a ruin in the conventional sense, it is a suspended moment. The Cold War, preserved in ice. "12 kilometres from Longyearbyen, along a coastline where no road runs anymore, the ruins of Grumant lean into the hillside above a grey sea. There are no caretakers here. No tour boats, no Lenin. Grumant was abandoned in 1961 and it has been absorbing silence ever since. The settlement was Norwegian operated, one of several mining operations that extracted coal from these mountains in the first half of the 20th century. At its working peak, hundreds of miners lived here in conditions that even then were considered harsh. When the seams became unprofitable, the company left. The buildings remained because the Arctic does not offer an easy way to dismantle things. Removal costs more than abandonment. What is remarkable about Grumant is not the decay itself. but its pace. In most climates, a building abandoned for 60 years becomes a foundation at best, a memory at worst. Here, the walls still stand. The window frames hold their shape. Rust advances slowly in cold that slows every chemical reaction. The Arctic preserves what it does not destroy outright, and it rarely destroys outright. It simply waits, leaving Grumant behind, moving along the coastline where dark water cuts between snow and rock. Svalbard preserves its ghosts well. The cold is unforgiving, but it is also, in its own way, a kind of memory. What happened here did not vanish. It simply stopped, and the Arctic held its shape. Svalbard has roughly as many polar bears as it has people. The difference is that people cluster in 3 small settlements, each one occupying a fraction of the coastline. The bears use everything: the sea ice, the shores, the interior valleys, the glacial edges. They are not visitors to this landscape. They are its primary residents. A mother and her cubs moving slowly across a snowfield near town. She does not alter her course. She has no particular reason to. Polar bears in Svalbard are legally protected, and they have always been here longer than the settlements. The hierarchy is understood by both parties. Polar bears are marine mammals. Their survival depends entirely on sea ice, specifically on using it as a platform to hunt the seals that live beneath it. As the Arctic warms and the ice retreats earlier each spring, bears are forced to swim greater distances, fast for longer periods, and range farther in search of food. Some reach body conditions that would not have been survivable a generation ago. The landscape that made them possible is contracting. The polar bear is not a symbol, it is a measurement. It tells us, precisely and without editorial, how much sea ice exists at any given moment. When the ice contracts enough, the bear's range contracts with it. When the ice disappears entirely, and in some projections, it will, within the lifetimes of people already born, the bear will have nowhere left to stand. What is true for the bear is true for the ecosystem it anchors. And what is true for the ecosystem is, eventually, true for everything downstream of it. Along the rocky shores, Walruses claim their territory with the quiet confidence of animals that have been here longer than memory. On Prince Karl's foreland and other protected stretches of coastline, they haul out in groups of dozens, sometimes hundreds. Tusks to the sky, indifferent to anything that cannot move them. Walrus populations in Svalbard collapse due to hunting and only recovered after protections introduced in 1952. Today, an estimated 27,000 walruses range through the Norwegian Arctic, one of the conservation success stories of the high north. Though one now threatened again by the loss of sea ice, they use as resting platforms between dives. The Svalbard reindeer is a subspecies found nowhere else on Earth. Smaller and stockier than their continental relatives, built for thermal retention, though they move through the tundra unafraid of human presence. Partly because they have few natural predators here, partly because they have simply never learned to be afraid. In winter, they dig through snow to reach frozen vegetation. They do not migrate, they endure. The rock ptarmigan shifts its plumage twice a year, white in winter, mottled brown in summer. A camouflage so precise it makes the bird effectively invisible in both seasons. Each species that lives here negotiated its own terms with the cold. None asked permission. They simply adapted across thousands of generations until the Arctic was not an obstacle, but a home. The Nordenskjold Glacier is the largest on Svalbard, a river of ice that flows from the central highlands down to the Isfjorden, where it meets the sea. It moves, as glaciers do, imperceptibly to the eye but measurably over years, and it is retreating. Not slowly in geological terms, rapidly by any meaningful measure. Svalbard is warming faster than almost anywhere else on the planet, roughly 5 times the global average rate. The reasons are complex, and reinforcing the loss of reflective sea ice exposes darker ocean water, which absorbs more heat, which melts more ice, which exposes more ocean. Scientists call it Arctic amplification. What it means in practice is that this archipelago is living through a version of the future that the rest of the world has not yet arrived at. The ice that carves into the fjords here is not new ice. It is ancient, formed from snow that fell hundreds, sometimes thousands of years ago. Compressed by weight into crystal structures so dense that they absorb all wavelengths of light except blue. When a glacier calves, it releases not just water, but time. A piece of the 14th century, falling into the 21st. The 14th of July Glacier was named by a French expedition in 1906 on that date. Since then, it has retreated more than 2 kilometres. The name has become, quietly, an irony, a fixed start point in language, marking a place that no longer exists where it was observed. Svalbard's glaciers are not disappearing. They are relocating slowly toward a future that has not yet been named. From late October to mid-February, the sun does not rise over Longyearbyen. Not once. The sky moves through shades of blue and grey, a civil twilight at midday, then nothing. For more than 100 consecutive days, night is the only register of time. Polar night syndrome is real and documented disrupted sleep, mood shifts, a kind of cognitive flattening that affects some residents more than others. But long-term inhabitants of Longyearbyen describe something more complex than mere endurance. They describe an intimacy with darkness that people from sunlit latitudes rarely experience. The way sound carries differently in the cold, the way the stars absent in the Arctic summer return in their full numbers. The way the town draws outward and slows to a pace that daylight never allows. When the sun finally returns in early March, the entire community of Longyearbyen gathers on the hillside above town to watch it. Not through windows, outside, in the cold, together. It rises for just a few minutes on that first day, a sliver of orange above the mountain to the south. Some people cry. Not from sadness, from something harder to name the recognition. Perhaps that light is not something to be taken for granted. That here it has to be waited for. "13 dogs, one sled, the mountains ahead, the settlement behind, and between them several hundred kilometres of nothing but snow and wind and the sound of paws on ice." Dog sledding in Svalbard is not recreation pretending to be tradition. It is the real thing, still used, still necessary, still practiced by people who know what they are doing and what the terrain will demand. Longyearbyen requires a special permit to use snowmobiles on many routes through the archipelago. A deliberate legal choice to preserve dog sledding as a functional mode of travel, not just a tourist activity. The requirement exists partly for ecological reasons, partly for safety ones. At this latitude, GPS is unreliable, communications are uncertain. And in the event of a breakdown, a snowmobile offers no warmth and no judgment. A dog team does. The musher reads the terrain through feel the resistance of the sled, the behaviour of the lead dogs, the quality of the snow underfoot. No instrument captures what an experienced team communicates. The dogs know when the ice is thin. They sense weather shifts hours before the sky shows them. Between musher and team, there is a shared language built from years of trust and current. In a world of satellites and instant information, dog sledding reminds us that some problems are still best solved by the trust between a human being and an animal. A contract older than writing, honoured at 78 degrees north, in the middle of the Arctic winter. Svalbard is a place where the usual rules stop working. You cannot die here, yet everything around you is in the process of dying. The glaciers, the ice, the ecological balances that held for 10,000 years. Soviet ruins stand preserved in permafrost, while the country that built them no longer exists. The bears remain, the aurora remains, the cold remains. What Svalbard teaches is not, finally, about the Arctic. It is about proportion. About what becomes visible when you strip away the noise, the traffic, the commerce, the 10,000 daily negotiations of ordinary life. Here, stripped of all that, certain things become clear: that ice has memory, that silence is not empty, that the most important question a landscape can ask is not how much we can extract from it, but whether we can afford to stay. Longyearbyen persists by treaty, by stubbornness, by the daily decision of a few thousand people to live somewhere that makes no concessions to comfort. They do not romanticize it. They simply live it, season by season, adapting as the place itself adapts, carrying on in the dark until the light returns. The polar bear does not know about the 1920 treaty. It does not know about Norway or Russia or the 46 signatory nations or the coal beneath the mountain. It knows the ice. It has always known the ice. And every year, the ice is a little less. The warning sign reads, "You are in polar bear territory," across the entire archipelago of Svalbard. It is, perhaps, the only honest map ever made of this place. Not a map of borders or resources or sovereignty, but a map of who this land actually belongs to. Thank you for watching.